Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this is a quick preview for Joyce versus Derek Chisora. This fight goes down on the 27th of July, so this weekend. Takes place at the O2 Arena in London. And, you know, in the media, it's being billed as a loser leaves town fight. To be honest, though, having said that, we've said that for so many Chisora fights, he loses these fights, yet, you know, he continues to show up on our TV screens. But, you know, you would imagine, should he lose this fight, which I think he will, that will be the end, because, you know, even the last fight Chisora had, he looked really poor. He won the fight on paper against Gerald Washington, but he arguably lost that fight. He certainly really struggled in that bout. Didn't really have that kind of aggression or energy, was plodding throughout. Not even in the early rounds was Chisora all that dangerous. He looked really washed in that bout. So, you know, him losing this fight, you would imagine it will be the end, and it should be the end. But as for Joyce, a couple of years ago, he was seen as one of the top contenders in the heavyweight division, outside the champions. At one point in time, he was kind of viewed as the main contender, the number one contender, to be honest. Went through some good opponents. He beat Daniel Dubois, made Dubois quit. He obviously beat Joseph Parker in a very impressive performance. Way back in his career, he beat Bryant Jennings. You know, the guy's got some good wins on the resume. And, you know, at the time, he was a certified contender. Then came along Zhili Zhang. Joyce got stopped in both of those fights against Zhili Zhang. Got stopped in 6 in the first fight. Stopped in 3, I believe, in the second fight. And since then, he's been on the rebound. Had one fight since. He fought Cash Ali, who is not even a British level heavyweight, to be honest. He stopped Cash Ali in 10 rounds, but didn't really look that great doing it, to be honest with you. So Joyce, since those defeats, has a lot to prove, and we'll see what he has in this bout. Listen, I fully expect Joe to win this fight, despite the bad form, despite the recent bad performances. He's younger than Chisora, he's fresher than Chisora. I know he's only 2 years younger. Joyce is 38, Chisora's 40, but there's a lot more miles on the clock with Derek. So yeah, I expect a pretty routine win for Joyce. The only trouble could be early on when Chisora is fresh, when he's punching hard. There's been a lot of talk actually recently about Derek Chisora's punching power. Recently, both Alexander Usyk and Dave Allen both stated that Chisora hit them harder than any other opponent, and Dave Allen just sparred with Derek Chisora. Of course, Usyk fought Derek. So yeah, that's definitely got people talking, and ultimately, it kind of plays into how I see this fight. If Derek Chisora is to pull off the upset, which would be monumental at this stage, in my opinion, he has to do it very early. He has to catch Joyce cold, essentially. That, of course, happened way back in the amateurs for Joyce against Sergey Kuzmin. And he needs to do something similar. We all know Joyce is susceptible to the overhand right, or overhands in general, and we saw that even before he got stopped by Zhili Zhang. You know, you go back to the Christian Hammer fight, for example. Christian Hammer badly out of shape. All he was really doing in that fight is occasionally throwing the overhand. When he threw it, it landed. You know, even Cash Ali had success with that shot. Carlos Takam had a lot of success with that shot. That's what Derek essentially needs to do. He needs to view this as a 2-round fight, put everything into the first 2 or 3 rounds, spam the overhand, spam the overhand, spam the overhand, and just hope something lands. Hope something catches Joyce cold, and maybe he could pull off the upset. Aside from that, I give Derek no chance whatsoever. After like the 2nd or 3rd round, the guy is going to be spent. Chisora in recent performances hasn't had the gas tank to fight hard for 10 or 12 rounds. We saw that against Tyson Fury. We even saw that against Gerald Washington. For me, it's just about Joyce navigating the early rounds. I think he needs to adopt a similar style in which he fought Daniel Dubois with, paying more attention to distance, getting behind the jab, taking the half step back, and just maintaining that range while clubbing down Chisora with that jab. And as the fight plays out, Chisora is going to be less and less active. You know, Chisora backs up to the ropes, he sits in corners. That's when Joe needs to start going to work the body and head, tattooing him with combinations and trying to put on a statement. He needs to stop Chisora in this bout, in my opinion. This version of Derek, Joyce has to stop him to make any sort of statement. I know stopping Chisora these days isn't exactly groundbreaking, but he needs to do that at least, in my opinion. And I think he will. I think he'll grind down Derek for a stoppage. Mid to late, I would say. Derek, despite him being well past his best, he is still quite tough. He will still take a beating. But yeah, I expect Joe to take him out mid to late rounds. Maybe Derek's corner even pull him out. The main event, listen, I think they could have done a lot better for Joyce in terms of opponent, to be honest. I'm disappointed with Derek as the name, to be quite frank. But it is what it is. It's what we've got. Just a brief mention as well about the undercard. There is a couple of decent fights on the undercard. Dennis McCann is rematching Baluta for the European Super Bantamweight title. Dennis McCann is seen as a bit of an up-and-comer in the UK. He won a domestic strap at Bantamweight, won the British quite recently. You know, he is a very sharp fighter, Dennis McCann. He's very unorthodox in his approach. He's athletically gifted. But in the first fight with Baluta, he really struggled with the pace that Baluta set. He struggled with the pressure. I think he got a bad cut in that fight, if memory serves me correct. Could be wrong. I'm sure that fight ended in a technical draw. Dennis McCann got a terrible cut in that fight. But it was a close fight. Arguably, Baluta should have got that decision, to be honest. But Dennis McCann is righting his wrong, or attempting to. I think this is going to be a tough fight. Baluta is a very, very capable... I'm not going to call him a journeyman. He's a gatekeeper. If you're not at a certain level, he will expose you. He will expose you. You look at Baluta's career. You know, he beat Andrew Kane, who was a prospect up and coming. He gave Liam Davis a tough fight, but was decisively beaten. He beat Brad Foster. He beat David Oliver Joyce. He beat TJ Dehaney. He beat Kyle Williams. If you're not at a certain level, he will expose you. But if you're of good stock, you should beat Baluta. So Dennis McCann has another opportunity. I think it will be a hard fight, but I think this time around he'll just about get the job done. But it's a good fight. It's a rematch that should have happened, and I'm glad it is. Also on the undercard, if you're a betting man, bet big on Ryan Garner versus Archie Sharp. This is a battle of two unbeaten domestic level guys. Ryan Garner 15-0, Archie Sharp 25-0. I've never been impressed with Archie Sharp. I think his record is greatly inflated. He's not really fought anybody. He has terrible habits. He's a back foot boxer who relies on athletic ability, his height and reach, his speed, his reactions. Like I said, he's got terrible habits. He pulls away from punches with his chin in the air. He doesn't really have the punching power to gain his opponent's respect. And he hasn't looked good for quite some time. How Archie Sharp has managed to get a record of 25-0, I'll never know, to be honest with you. I'll never know. In his last fight, Sharp was down twice against a journeyman, like a 50-50 journeyman. Badly hurt in that fight, won on points in the end. Way back when, I felt he lost to a guy called Jeff Ofori. I've never been impressed with Archie Sharp. Never. Ryan Garner, again, he's not really all that proven, but I think he's much more fundamentally sound than Archie Sharp. He's a bigger puncher, and I think he'll go through Archie Sharp like a doorway. I think he'll knock out Archie Sharp. I'm not sure what the odds are for that fight, but I would put down on Garner winning by stoppage. You may get some good odds, I'm not sure. But if you're a betting man, go for Garner by stoppage. Lastly, there's a whole host of other prospects fighting on this card, but also Moses Itauma makes his return. The 19-year-old heavyweight prospect. He's fighting Marius Vac, who is 43 years old, like 6'7", been around for years, Marius Vac, way past his best. It'll be interesting to see whether Itauma can stop Wack, because even now, Marius Wack has a good chin. Not as good as it was, but he's still durable, you know. Fraser Clark, for example, couldn't knock out Mariusz Vach, and that fight happened relatively recently. You know, in his 10 losses, he's only been stopped 4 times. Once against Makhmudov, once against Povetkin due to facial damage, once against Jarrell Miller due to an injury, and he got stopped on his feet against Martin Bakole, you know? So the guys who have stopped him have been of pretty good stock, and it's not like they go in there and blow him out for the most part. So yeah, got a good chin. I'm sure he'll go a few rounds, and that's what a Talma needs right now, in my opinion. But, you know, will he offer much resistance? I don't think so, personally, but he'll go a few rounds. But anyway, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Del Boy, peace!